John in Naperville, Illinois, listening to WNWF. Hey, John, what's up?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm wondering how long you and I are going to be able to discuss, because I have completely polar opposite viewpoints of yourself.
Well, please tell me a country where inequality is high, like the United States, and all of these social indexes don't suck.
You know what? You caught me off guard. I am on a trip, and you caught me off guard, and I can't give you the stats. I will be able to look it up and get it back. But what I'm saying is, the qualities that the countries that you're citing, where does that fall into place? You have not used, and I've recorded this program, and I can bring it back to you. You've never used the words responsibility, accountability, individual progress, nothing else. You're talking about none of these people would want to go live in those countries. And if it's just about children and inequality, let me tell you, Tom, there's a book out there, and you should read it, okay? It's called Reduced Ability. It's about the dumbing down of society.
Yeah. Respectfully, John, if you think that nobody would ever want to live in any of those countries, you have not visited them. I lived in Europe for a year.
No, sir, I'm sorry. I lived in Europe for 3 years.
Okay, so I don't understand how you can say somebody would not want to live in Austria or the Netherlands or Germany or France or in particular Norway, Finland, Sweden.
I'm telling you, the people that are being affected by the stats of which you're citing, those people would not want, and I would bet yes. You and I.
Those are the people who are doing really well. Those are the people who have the lowest levels of violence, the lowest levels of sexually transmitted disease, the lowest levels of teenage pregnancy, the highest educational outcomes, and those are the countries that have the lowest income equality or wealth equality, inequality.
Would you like to put out the real stats for your listeners? Reaganomics also benefited a huge amount of our culture, and a huge amount. I benefited. My parents benefited. I'm one of 5. We all benefited from it, but I can tell you.
Are you talking about his doubling of the taxes on working people, or his cutting by 3/4 the taxes on billionaires? Which of those was that?
The previous.
Okay, so by doubling the Social Security tax, by doubling the tax that people make back in Reagan's day, who made up to $40,000 a year, now it's up to $113,000. That helped us.
It also made. Yes, but you're failing to lose an awful lot. There's an awful lot of other points of his.
Okay, by his running up by his tripling the national debt, first president in the history of the United States to do that. That helped us.
Are you ludicrous?
When Reagan came into office, the national debt was a little over $800 billion. When he left, it was over $3 trillion. Most of that, at least $1 trillion of that, went to the military-industrial complex for the Star Wars program. He basically was spending money hand over fist as fast as he could. He borrowed more money than every president from George Washington to Jimmy Carter combined. He was the first president to do any such thing. He borrowed more money in real terms than we spent on World War II.
You know what? You're going to remember me saying this. I'm agreeing with you 100%. But when you do put money into military, when you do put money into compounds and things like you're stating, you got to realize that's money that's going to come back to you.
No.
Let me just say this. Let me just say this right here, and then we're done, Tom. Let me just make
if I may, I will let you say that, John. In fact, I'll let you say all you want afterwards, but let me just make this point. If you take, as Franklin Roosevelt did, let's compare Republicans to Republicans. As if you do like Dwight Eisenhower did and borrow a couple $100 billion and build roads and bridges and highways and hospitals and schools, those things produce revenue for the country for the next 2, 3, 4 generations. If, on the other hand, you do as Reagan did and you borrow trillions of dollars, he borrowed over $2 trillion, borrow trillions of dollars and use it to build weapons of war that are taken to other nations and dropped on them and then evaporate, or when they're obsolete, they're turned into scrap, that produces no ongoing wealth for the country. It produces short-term jobs, absolutely. There is a short-term stimulus, but it's a bubble stimulus, which is why Reagan had the worst recession at that point in the history of the United States since the Great Depression. Back to you.
Okay. I can put it in much simpler terms for me and for you. And remember me and your listening audience, remember me saying this, just give me an answer on which gentleman you would give the money to. I just developed a scenario, and I'll read it to you, and it's pretty quick, okay? You and I are buddies. We go to Starbucks and we get coffee. You've got $50,000 in your pocket. I've got $50,000 in my pocket. We both borrowed it. We borrowed that money, and we have to return that money or failure to go to jail. We have to return that money in 1 year. We have to return that money in a year. We borrowed that money from a bank or a lending institution or friend or whatever, but we walked out of that Starbucks with $50,000 in each of our pockets. You have to make a decision now. You turn left out of Starbucks, there is a billionaire standing there. You got to give him the $50,000, or you turn right out of Starbucks, and there's a homeless guy there with no health insurance or nothing, and you've got to give him the $50,000. And in a year, you come back and you walk up to that gentleman and say, "Can I have my $50,000 back?" Who do you want to get? If your life depended on it, Tom, who would you give your money to that was borrowed and you have to return it? Would you give it to the wealthy man? No. I don't want to. It's a very simple question.
Yeah, let me answer.
Give it to?
Well, I would give it to the homeless guy, and here's why. If you'll listen. First of all, your question assumes that a country has the same goal as an individual, and that's not the case. If you read the Constitution of the United States, it starts out with "we the people." It lists 6 reasons why we created the United States, and among them is to promote the general welfare, to promote domestic tranquility, things like that. So if you gave that $50,000 to the homeless guy, he's going to spend 100% of it. When he spends that money, he goes into stores and spends that money, those stores will have to buy products. When they go out to the wholesalers and say, we need to buy, plus they're going to pay salaries to their workers. When they buy products, the factories are going to say, hey, we've got to make some stuff. And so they're going to hire some people. When they start, and then those factories are going to need raw materials. And so they're going to contact their suppliers and they're going to hire people. So that $50,000 is going to become, in the economy, if you're looking at this as a nation, that $50,000 is probably going to, back before free trade, it would have become about $240,000. The force multiplier before NAFTA and GATT was around 4.3, 430%. Right now, because of NAFTA and GATT, it's around 1.3. So that $50,000 will become about $65,000 or $70,000 in the economy to the benefit of society. So if instead of being a human being, you're Uncle Sam, you give it to the homeless guy. On the other hand, if you give it to the billionaire, he will put it in a Swiss bank account, and you'll never see another penny of it.
But you got to get it back. In other words, he'll get. I'll tell you what, Tom. Your listeners.
That's my point. Your metaphor, John, is flawed in that you're assuming that the goal of an individual is the same as the goal of a nation. That the work of an individual is the same as the work of a nation. When Dwight Eisenhower came into office, Republican Dwight Eisenhower came into office, our debt to GDP ratio was worse than it is now. It was 127%. We owed 127% of the entire GDP of the United States. And he got us out of that, not by cutting a penny from spending, but by borrowing and spending more money. That's by basically giving it to the homeless guy, by putting people to work building roads and bridges and hospitals and schools.
I'll tell you what. How about this, Tom?
And we paid off the debt.
Am I still on?
Yeah.
Okay, Tom. You got a great show here. I'll give you my information. I'll give your show my information. I'll keep in touch with you. I will put up that amount of money. I will meet you. I will fly. I will meet you. And we can prove to your listeners.
John, your premise is flawed. This isn't about how an individual should invest $50,000. This is how a nation should conduct itself. And that's the problem with Reaganomics, is it's based on this libertarian notion that we're a me society and that it's all about the individual. That's infantilism. That's what the advertising industry does, is it reduces us to children. I, me, I want. In fact, as adults, we should be asking ourselves what's best for all of us. Read Matthew 25.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I think that, for at least a couple thousand years, we've kind of had this figured out. Give it to the least among us.